But until then, we're going to go back to the NFL. And, Rob, Cam Newton has been making some noise. And good for him. You know, I always thought, Rob, and he's not doing it as far as traditional media, but Cam Newton, Rob, I think could clearly have a future if he wanted to. You know, on some broadcast show. He obviously was a star, handsome guy, opinionated, as we'll soon see. I think he could be good if he wants to go that route. But he's doing his own podcast and making some noise with that. And lately, he's been talking about Brock Purdy, called him a game manager a few weeks ago. And he doubled down and went even harder recently after they advanced to the Super Bowl. Here's Cam Newton.
I've never said that Brock Purdy was trash. What I did say is Brock Purdy is a game manager. That's not hate. That's just what I feel to be facts. But I still reserve the right to say this. To be labeled a game changer, Brock Purdy has to be the best player on the offensive side of the ball. And that's not the case.
And who's the best player?
Christian McCaffrey. Man, look, I ain't recanting. And if you really want to just be honest, if you add in the defensive talent and you add in the offensive talent, Brock Purdy is the 10th best player on this team. Okay, cool. Did he have a great game? Yes. Is he been playing out of his mind? Yes. Is he a quarterback that's hot? Yes. But he's still the 10th best player on his team.
Where you at on this, Rob?
I mean, Chris, this is, and you know I'm not the biggest. I'm not like some Brock Purdy pom-pom guy, okay? But this again is, and I don't want to get on the soapbox, but this again is, I don't feel like he's giving a honest take because he has skin in the game. And I know he's not a player anymore.
You think there's a little jealousy?
Yeah, I do, Chris, and I do. And I think that this is what happens because no one ever talked about him in those glowing terms that he's the next Joe Montana or he's the next anybody.
He got a lot of love, though.
I mean,
won an MVP.
But
you know
that's
what I mean?
But that's what I'm saying.
Obviously.
And I'm saying that it's because of that, Chris, that he feels like, what? This guy, like, I won an MVP. I went to the Super Bowl, but this is before Brock Purdy got there now, right? And all that. And people weren't going gaga over me. I had 35 passing touchdowns and 15 rushing or whatever it was, the number, Chris, right?
Well, it might be, and I'm not going to cut you off, but it also might be, Rob, that Cam's, what is he, 33? Like, he's still
not old.
Of age where he obviously feels he should be in the league.
Do you see what I'm saying? I do believe that there's a little bit of that. I'm not saying it's straight up all the way. I don't know Cam, Chris, and I don't know his full. I'm just saying as somebody who's listening, that's what it sounds like to me.
That's interesting.
That's my take.
Look, Cam was a quarterback, same position.
He's got skin in the game.
Was obviously a more talented player than Brock Purdy. And Cam was just in the league, 2 years ago?
Right.
It feels like he should still be in the league. Probably feels like he's not getting a
Tom
fair
Brady
shot.
played till he was 40-something, and Cam's 33 sitting on the sidelines. Yeah.
Right.
You think he's going to be ready to crown a quarterback? Thinking, look at the tools that I had.
Russell Wilson's older than Cam.
Think about that.
I believe, Rob, and he's not in the league, but I think people will be a little surprised when they hear this. Let me check it out. I believe RG3 is Cam's a year older than RG3. But that's young. That's young. Cam's 34. Well, let me address what he said. And I think your point, you might be right. I mean, I think that's fair speculation.
It's just speculation. That's all it is. Right.
That could be. That's not unfair speculation. First of all, let me say this. If Brock Purdy were the 10th best player on this team. And I don't think he is. I think he's higher. That wouldn't be a shame. Rob, Terry Bradshaw is a Hall of Famer, and he's a legend, right? But I would argue that on those Steelers Super Bowl teams, and this is backed up, this is not opinion. I'm looking at decorated. Who got more accolades? Who made more Pro Bowls, more All-Pro teams? Mel Blount, more decorated than Terry Bradshaw. Bradshaw did win an MVP, but he only made 3 Pro Bowls. Okay, he was never viewed as like the best quarterback. I mean, I guess that one year when he won MVP, but for the most part, he wasn't viewed as the best quarterback in the league. He wasn't viewed as good as Roger Staubach, but Terry delivered in the Super Bowls. And so Mel Blount, Mean Joe Green, Mike Webster, the center, Jack Lambert, Franco Harris, those guys, and you maybe even Jack Ham. I mean, again, Jack Ham did get more accolades as a linebacker. All those guys have far more, some of them 3 times as many Pro Bowl appearances as Terry Bradshaw. So you could argue, I'm not even throwing in Lynn Swann, John Stallworth, because, that's arguable. But all these guys were more decorated than Bradshaw. And yet, that doesn't stop Bradshaw from being the legend, and it doesn't take anything away from him as a key cog in those 4 Super Bowls. And so there are other quarterbacks you could point to that weren't the best players on their team. Now, Patrick Mahomes, best player on this team. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, probably. He had the injury issues, but no injuries. Those are the best guys on their team. And nobody's saying Brock Purdy's in that class. That also doesn't mean he can't win an MVP. And so I would just say first, that's not a shame that you have good teammates who are more decorated than you and viewed as better than you. There's nothing wrong with that. But I would argue, I think Purdy's probably their 5th or 6th best player. And I would say the best player is Trent Williams, the left tackle. You never heard his name in MVP talk. Obviously, he's an offensive lineman. You're not going to hear that. Second best player, I think, is Fred Warner, linebacker. Third, I can go with McCaffrey. We think he's the best running back in the league this year. And Purdy's not the best quarterback in the league. Fourth, you can, if you want to argue Kittle, tight end, easier position to play, obviously, than quarterback. But if you want to argue Kittle, and then I think you can argue Purdy after that. If you want to say Bosa. Bosa had a little bit of a down year, still good, but sacks are way down, almost twice as many sacks last year.
Yeah.
So,
not
a
the
little
same.
bit down, right? So Debo, Rob, you noticed, I said this on our show. A few years ago before his injury, I thought Debo is probably the best football player in the league. But he's had the injuries. He's even, missed some games this year. So you probably put Purdy ahead of him.
You don't even hear his name like you used to.
Is good. Yeah. I mean, so I don't think, I think 10 is too high. But do you think some of this, you mentioned Cam, and obviously we see the connections between him and Purdy. But do you also think, beyond just maybe if there's any personal jealousy, that there could be just feeling like Purdy's getting too much love?
Yeah, and that's where it comes from. That's what I was saying, Chris. Like, to be mentioned with Joe Montana, well, no matter who it is, like Cam is sitting there going, "What?" They're saying he's Joe Montana, and it doesn't matter, like, to what degree. Oh, he nobody's saying he has the stats or he hasn't won anything, right. but just to even be mentioned in that breath, I'm sure that that's part of it, and some of the stuff that might be there. And this is the difference between Chris Broussard making a comment, who's not an NFL quarterback, who doesn't have any skin in the game, compared to a guy who won an MVP, you know what I mean, who excelled at a high level and is looking at this other Mr. Irrelevant kid, and they're going gaga over him because he has this great bunch of weapons and a scheme that worked with it seemed any quarterback they put in it. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to.
Well, not be. And again, I'm not saying he's jealous. It's your take.
That's
but
my
I don't think
take.
it's a crazy take. But he might not be removed enough from the game. I will say this. A lot of athletes I see, Greg Jennings, who's on our radio show and on First Things First with me. Some of the guys on ESPN, Ryan Clark, all these guys. I do think, though, a lot of these guys are objective. Ryan has been critical at times of Mike Tomlin, even
you
as
think Dan Orlovsky's critical when talking about the Lions or Stafford? I'm just asking.
Well, he clearly is. Stafford is his guy, right?
Okay.
I give you that, but I think overall Orlovsky does a good job.
Yeah, I'm just asking. That's when I think it's hard for him too, and he played for the Lions as well.
And he shares that. You know what I mean?
You know what I mean? I'm just saying.
But I think overall he does a really good job. And like I said, Marcus Spears, I think guys do a good job. But maybe if this is a case of maybe not quite being removed enough, from the game. Remember RG3 was talking, I can't remember what team it was that might need a quarterback. It might have been the Browns when Deshaun or guys got, I don't think it was them, but somebody was kind of in need. Remember he threw his name out there?
Right. Yep.
Like
dude, you haven't played in 8 years. What?
Right.
Or whatever it is. It hasn't been that long.
Those are situations we know Cam would like to be playing. And to be honest, Rob, I wouldn't doubt. In fact, I probably bet on it that Cam does maybe feel like if I was in San Francisco.
There you go, Chris. You
with
just
McCaffrey, with Debo,
Yep.
with Kittle, with Ayuk.
With the offensive scheme that they have, I could play
and then
that.
some.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And I don't think he could, Rob, because he doesn't throw it like Purdy.
But I'm just saying, I think
But
that's
yeah,
what
he may feel that way.
Yeah.